It's hard to understand what's going on in the burnt city and difficult to find your way round. So, for this video, I'll not only be reviewing the show, but giving you tips on how to get the best out of it. And it is on in London until December 2022, so you have plenty of opportunity to go experience it. Punchdrunk are the leaders in immersive theatre, where you're right in the middle of what's going on. There are lots of stories being told, adding up to a beginning, middle and end, but not necessarily in that order. So, like anything you're in the middle of, you don't have the big picture until afterwards, if then. I usually love this form of theatre. So, I was desperate to see the burnt city. But once there, my desire turned to disappointment. The show, directed by Felix Barrett and Maxine Doyle, is about the ancient Greek myths connected with the Trojan War. Now, I'd expected it to be non-linear, and that's my first tip. As you walk around the 100,000 square feet of floor space, don't expect to understand what's going on. And this is partly because it's told through dance rather than spelled out through spoken word. Now, I had a general idea about the Trojan War and events reported in ancient Greek poetry and plays, but I still struggled to identify or connect them, and I witnessed many events. What I didn't expect was how uneventful the events would be, how lacking in dramatic tension. The biggest tension is the fear that while you're watching one event, you're missing out on something much more dramatic in another room. Keep watching, and I'll give you some pointers on what to look for and how not to miss the key moments, as well as what I thought of the show. Look, I may not have been as engaged as I would have liked to have been, or found the events as dramatic as I think they should have been, but it's still a great experience to be immersed in this world of war and revenge, and to be standing right next to its inhabitants as they meet their fate. That's a 1-minute review of The Burnt City. The tips or secrets about The Burnt City that I'm going to give you are from my own experience of visiting the show and from other people's reports. They're not in any way official information. In fact, Punchdrunk go out of their way not to give you any directions or timetable, and the stewards won't help. I apologise if there are any factual mistakes in what follows. The opinions, as they say, are my own. So, The Burnt City is about the war between Mycenae, or Greece, and Troy, the so-called Trojan War, and is primarily based on two ancient Greek plays, Euripides' Hecuba and Aeschylus' Agamemnon. Will it help if you know these plays? Probably not that much. As you enter the building, there is a brief audio history of the Trojan War and its aftermath, so you will have a fair idea of the big moments you may see. You go through a faux museum, which is even more helpful in trying to understand the events of the war that will be covered. So it's really is worth taking a few moments to look at the exhibits. The case containing the last exhibit has been broken open, as if to say the past is now coming to life. You're then in for 3 hours with no interval, unless you choose to take a break. Punchdrunk have acquired their own home for the first time in their 20-odd year history, and they've converted their building in Woolwich and the adjoining one into Troy and Mycenae. It has to be said the sets by Felix Barrett, Livi, Vaughan and Beatrice are fantastic. There's extraordinary attention to detail. Mycenae conjures up Fritz Lang's 1920s film Metropolis. Troy suggests a period before the Second World War with a neon sleaze reminiscent perhaps of 1920s Berlin. Oh, and here's a tip. While you may feel you want to spend your entire time watching things happening, there's a great deal to be gained from exploring some of the apparently nearly 100 small rooms in Troy. These are often bedrooms, sometimes shops, perhaps abandoned in the course of the siege or the attack. Go into them, or some of them. Take a look at the books, the pictures, look behind the clothes in the wardrobes. Apart from the fascinating insights into their lives, and the thought and time that has gone into creating these glimpses is hard to comprehend, there are also clues as to what's going on. After you've gone through the museum, you make a choice about where to go first. Lights beckon you, but to help you find your choice, look carefully and you'll see signs, one welcoming you to Troy, which is down a long tunnel, and the other a border-crossing gatehouse to Mycenae. Each space has 2 floors, and in both you'll witness violent acts or feel the threat of violence. But at least in Troy you'll find people having fun while the city is under attack, and you'll wander through small spaces in a warren of rooms. On the other side, there's gloomy Mycenae, a military state where the warriors prepare for war and return to face its consequences. Here there are 2 large open areas. Downstairs, what appears to be a military camp. Upstairs, a palace. They're only a few rooms off. It's a show that's much more about the effect of war than the fight itself, and the cycle of revenge dominates. So what are the big 4 moments? Well, before I tell you, let me give you this inside information. All the events are repeated, so you have 3 opportunities to see them. It would be difficult to scurry back and forth and catch them in chronological order, but if you know what you're looking for, you can hope to see them all in the 3 hours. First, at the start of the war, Agamemnon sacrifices his daughter Iphigenia to the gods in exchange for good fortune. You need to look for a bride getting ready for what she thinks is a wedding. This is in one of the few rooms in Mycenae. You can then watch her taken to the ground floor and placed on one of the 2 giant tank traps, which look like misshapen crucifixes, on which she is killed. Agamemnon's wife, Clytemnestra, is not happy about this, but more of that later. Over in Troy, the Greeks invade, using the famous Trojan horse, which apparently is there in some form, but not an obvious one, so it's something to look out for. Queen Hecuba's daughter, Polyxena, is murdered by the invaders and strung up. I found this to be one of the most upsetting scenes. Hecuba has learned that King Polymestor, an ally of the Greeks, has murdered her son, whom she sent to him for safekeeping. He doesn't know, she knows. So when he arrives in Troy, she and fellow women do a friendly dance with him in a red room on the top floor, possibly a nightclub, that eventually turns violent as they overwhelm and blind him. Back in Mycenae, Agamemnon arrives home in triumph, with Cassandra in tow. You'll recognise him by his splendid gold head mask, just one of dozens of imaginative, almost superhero costumes by David Israel Reynoso, inspired by ancient Greece. Agamemnon's wife, Clytemnestra, you remember her, greets him. He goes upstairs where there's a huge block made of concrete, I think, like a fashion show runway, where he's at first fated but then drugged. He takes a shower with Clytemnestra, who in revenge for his killing of their daughter, smashes his head against the wall. One of the more horrific moments. But even so, I found that because of the time it took to get to that point with all the slow entwined dancing, it became boring rather than tense. Another tip, stay until the end, because given that killing is a dominant theme, there's a climax in which many of the performers take part in a kind of techno dance of death, half naked and possibly in hell, but more literally in Mycenae. A useful approach may be to follow what you might call the wisdom of the crowd. If a group of spectators have accumulated, there's usually something going on. Some people like to fix on one performer and follow that person, because these various stories do have beginnings, middles and ends, unlike the overall show. And those beginnings are usually quite small, building up, and then usually with a follow-through after the almost inevitable killing. I found these events strangely uninvolving, but I think I might have felt more involved if I'd adopted this approach. Perhaps before you even buy a ticket, I should give you this tip. And it won't be a surprise if you know Punchdrunk's past work. But if you don't, this is a dance show. And I don't mean anything goes dance. I mean contemporary dance. There's next to no speech to help you understand what's going on, and the dancing is nearly always in slow motion and stretched out. I'm not questioning for a moment the brilliance of choreographer Maxine Doyle or her dancers, but if you're not familiar with the language of dance, which I'm not, you may struggle to comprehend what it is the dancers are trying to convey. The performers embrace erotically or sinisterly, push each other apart aggressively, swing one another around. You'll find it potentious or pretentious, depending on your opinion of contemporary dance. Personally, I like that kind of dance, but in small doses, which this isn't. Then there's the audience. Their spookily anonymous masks take away individuality, and even more so when they form a crowd and follow a particular character or train of events, almost crushing you or pushing you to one side in the process. But, much to my surprise, and perhaps because there is so much room, I found there were times and spaces when nothing was going on. I went round a whole floor of Troy at one point and saw nobody. Now, more of a warning than a tip. This show is not for the claustrophobic, nor for people with visual impairment, I'd say. You may find being in the building overwhelming at times because it's mostly dark with haze as well on occasion. And there are some trip hazards, even if they are highlighted with tape. Given such an underlit environment, it may seem odd for me to compliment the lighting designers, but F9, Ben Donoghue and Felix Barrett have done a great job in adding to the sense of being a victim of war, with a mixture of murkiness, sudden flashes and bright spotlights. The sound by Stephen Dobbie, with its screeching, thudding, reverberating chords, adds to the febrile atmosphere. I give The Burnt City 3 stars. The organisers, quite rightly, would like you to use public transport to get to the show, but it is in Woolwich, which is a long way from the centre of London, so you may, like me, may have to go by car if you're not going to spend most of your day travelling. The best place to park, I found, is Calderwood Street multi-storey car park, which is about a 10-minute walk away from the venue. Arrive in good time, at least 15 minutes before your allocated slot, because there will be a queue to get in, even with staggered entry times. You're asked to put your mobile phone in a locked bag, which you then carry around with you. Bags, coats, picnic hampers, even bottles of water will need to be checked into the cloakroom. So I advise you to travel light to avoid the massive queue at the end of the show. Can you manage without taking your phone? Big decision, I know. But if you do leave it behind, don't forget to print out your tickets and take a payment card if you want to buy something at the bar. Oh, but here's a tip. The bar stays open after the show ends, so you can go there and wait for the queues to die down. You'll be asked to wear a COVID-safe face covering. That's pretty sensible since you'll be in close proximity to a lot of people as you walk around. But on top of that, you'll be required in the Punchdrunk tradition to don a carnival-style mask. It's not actually that uncomfortable. Also, this is a promenade show. You'll be doing a lot of walking, so wear sensible shoes. Let's mention the facilities. There are toilets throughout the building, but the one bar is another story. Here's a clue. It's in Troy. Here's another clue. Ask a steward. They won't give you any information to do with the show, but they will point you to the toilets, exit, and crucially, the bar. Which incidentally is a good ploy if you can't find Troy. As well as a range of drinks and tables to sit at where you can remove your 2 masks, hurrah, in the bar there is excellent live entertainment. The whole decadent feel gives cabaret a run for its money. It opens an hour after the start, so Troy may be the best place to begin, with an hour or so looking round, then a break in the bar before moving on to the bleak foreboding of Mycenae. As I mentioned before, it stays open after the show, so you can use every minute of your 3 hours on the Trojan War if you wish, and still enjoy the cabaret. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you'd like to be the first to know about my future reviews, please subscribe. If you'd like to read my reviews, go to oneminutetheatreReviews.co.uk, and you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for watching.